joining us for another episode of the Deals for Dentists podcast. And today we're joined by Paul Edwards. He's the CEO and founder of CEDR HR Solutions. And Paul, you're zooming in from Arizona?
I am. I'm in Tucson, Dr. Block.
Man, that sounds so good. It's freezing here. I'm outside of Boston. It's like 12 degrees and windy.
Yeah, we're having a cold snap. It's only going to get up to 70 today. So
oh man, that's tough. That's tough.
It's tough.
So Paul is the CEO and founder of CEDR HR Solutions. You can go to Deals for Dentists and you can find their promo offer of get $700 off their handbook with a 2-year membership agreement. So Paul, thanks for joining us. Tell me all about CEDR HR Solutions.
So, the main things that we do, like if I just gave you the elevator pitch, the first 3 things I tell everybody out there, we create custom employee handbooks, which is kind of the foundation for what it is that CEDR provides as its main service, which is HR support. So we need to do the custom crafted employee handbook because every single person who comes to us is, you're in different states, you have different number of employees. That means you have different state rules apply to you or don't apply to you. Same thing on the federal side. So if we want to be able to support in HR, then we have to have a really good foundation and make sure that you as the dentist or your managers have everything in your employee handbook that you should have in order to show that you comply. Everything that you should have that should protect you, and that's something that a lot of folks don't realize, is that handbooks properly written with good policies in them actually provide legal protection. And so we want to make sure we have both of these things in place so that when you call with a question and need an answer to your everyday HR issues, some simple, some complicated, we need to know that if we give them the answer to a California practice or Boston practice or a Florida practice, we need to know that we are giving an answer that is correct and that you have the basis for having gotten, most of what you've done so far right, before you call us. So that's the handbook, support, and then software. I mean, we all want to be paperless. We all want it to be as painless as possible. And so about 10 years ago, as HR experts, we started developing our own software. So we brought in, software folks. That continues to be a major part of what we do. And we call it the HR Vault. We do HIPAA training through software. It's our own programs. It's all our own stuff. We also integrate really robust timekeeping. So I know a lot of your listeners, Dr. Block, have patient management systems. You've got Dentrix, Eaglesoft, and there are a myriad of other ones. And they almost all have built-in timekeeping systems in them. It's just a little clock, people clock in and out. But unfortunately, they're not really the time savers that they could be. They are also can't be compliant in every state like they should be. So again, we want systems that protect you. And so we have a really, a pretty awesome integrated timekeeping system where employees can also self-service in that system. So imagine over the course of your next 20 years or 30 years in practice, how many times you or a manager are going to have to answer timekeeping questions like, can you correct my time for me? How many days do I have accrued? How many days did I take? Are we going to be closed for Monday after July 4th because the 4th falls on Sunday? And I could just keep going on and on and on and on. And so our HR Vault with the timekeeping are all designed so that employees can self-service. They can answer a lot of their own questions. They can do things electronically, so it's tracked. So remember, if someone comes to you and says, I forgot to clock in, would you please clock me in? And you do that for them. That could actually come back to bite you if that wasn't made an official request, if it wasn't approved by the employee, if it doesn't show up that they made the request, and all of that can be done quite well electronically. So I'll tell a quick story, Dr. Block, and then we'll move on to any question you got. We had an office where an employee was making a claim that they weren't being paid properly. So they'd been fired for some other reason. They found an attorney. Part of that attorney's claim was a wage and hour claim. Part of that attorney's accusation was that the Practice was not paying the employee properly for the hours that they were working and that they weren't getting it right. And the other side, our client, their attorney, were quickly able to show the judge that this employee had asked for 85 clocking corrections in the single year before, where they either clocked in improperly, clocked in, didn't clock in, clocked out late, forgot to clock. And that was not good for the other side when our folks were able to say, look, here's what's actually going on. And so, again, all of these systems are built not just to support and provide answers, but also to provide kind of this, I'll call it passive ongoing protection, which also should save you way more time and in, you know, in the best of circumstances, paying for itself.
Now, was this office protected with those 85 clocking correction because it was all well documented?
It had an impact. The impact that it had was that they were able to show a couple of times where the employee answered some text from a manager where it was after hours and the employee was not clocked in. And so they, you know, that was the basis for the whole thing, is they could show that some little bit of work had been getting done. So what happened is that, you know, you have the actual missing hours that they're claiming that they didn't get paid for, and then you have penalties. And so the penalty is what you're really concerned about, and some of it can be by statute. It can be 3 times, or it can be infinite. The judge or the jury can make it up. So in this case, what happened was the penalty was not infinite, it was minimal. And in the end, the settlement was pretty minimal. So they came in demanding, I don't know, it was $250,000 and you know, all this stuff. I think the case ended with the employee and the only getting about $4,000. And then there were the legal fees, you know, and that added up to about $30,000 between the two sides. But
it sounds like some disgruntled employee, huh?
She was not happy to be fired, and you know, I don't remember how she got hooked up with the attorney, but
so it's things like this that, you know, they don't teach you in dental school, and you know you come out and you know the clinical side, but we're not schooled or trained in HR. So you're basically, you know, you're protecting the dentists, you know, for someone that's, you know, coming out of school or they're associating, like as an associate, I didn't really care about HR because I would go in, I'd do my thing and I'd leave.
Yep.
But when you start to become a business owner and you have employees, then it's nice to have some, you know, advice and protection. So can you explain exactly what HR is? Is that a very broad term that deals with anything with staff?
It does. Yeah. It's human resource, and it's human resources, which is a word I don't really love because it kind of denotes that people are a commodity, but it is the term. So HR includes everything, everything: payroll, benefits, handbooks, what you do on a day-to-day basis. You have an HR issue every day. You have a people issue every day. A lot of times they're not big deals, but there's always something that's coming in. You know, health insurance can be part of HR. Compensation plans. Again, we're smaller businesses here, so we don't really, you know, we don't all think about compensation plans and pay bands and, you know, all these things that larger HR departments do. But I think one of the things that we want to point out is that a lot of the stuff that you guys pick up, and we all do it. I did it too. I just want to be clear with everybody. When I first had my first businesses at 30 years old, they weren't HR businesses. And I made every mistake that you guys make: hiring employees as independent contractors, not having people clock, and just saying, look, I'll pay you $60 for the day, you know, paying people under the table. And, you know, just doing things that I didn't know. I didn't know what it was that I was doing wrong at the time. Fortunately for me, my first businesses, I didn't have the word doctor in front of my name. And so if someone did go to an attorney about what I was doing, they would look at how much my net worth was at that time, and I probably wouldn't catch a lawsuit because lawyers don't sue poor people. But when they see the word doctor in front, they're like, "Oh yes, let's talk further about this. Who's your employer?"
Their ears
Uh,
perk up.
yeah, their ears perk up. So when we you know when we think about the well, when we think about this thing holistically, that's kind of what we're thinking about. Is you guys often are picking stuff up from other folks. Like you think that if you get your hands on a handbook that has, say, 80 people in the business, that you probably got yourself a pretty good handbook because they had a lawyer do it and they had, all these things happen. I used to run into a lot of handbooks that were borrowed that were in hospitals or in other larger organizations or in like a spouse's organization, which was, much bigger. And so you pick up things HR wise that really aren't for small businesses. You pick up methods like 3 strike rules and progressive and corrective actions and PIP plans. And you pick up all sorts of little things that you think would be good for you when in fact they aren't the right fit for you at your size because you don't have a full HR department. You don't have someone to administer and make sure that you actually adhere to your plan for improvement when you are working with an employee. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't avail yourself of these principles, setting someone down, saying, this is the issue, this is the impact, I need you to improve, this is how I need you to improve. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do those things. It means you should use different mechanisms for doing them. So they're a little bit more self-service, and the system's a little more cognizant that you shouldn't tie yourself to something like that. You should have the employee tie themselves to it and keep yourself out of that, out of the agreement side of that sort of stuff. So, Eric, I know that was a big answer. I kind of went all over the place. HR is a big thing. For us, it's handbooks, it's problem solving, it's software, and we can help you with your payroll. That's absolutely something we do. We went out and we got wholesale payroll for everybody. Whether you join CEDR or not, I'm happy to give that payroll to people so they can get it cheaper. And we also have a partner for background checks. So if you take care of those things, those 5 things, you're pretty covered. You're pretty well taken care of.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I was transitioning from associate to becoming a partner, I was looking at doing my own thing and starting my own office. And I just was so overwhelmed with everything you just mentioned.
How
I
did you
didn't
do
know.
it? Who helped you? What did it take a ton of time? What was it like?
Well, I ended up staying on and becoming a partner in the office that I
Oh,
was associated in.
that was easy.
So I chose not to do my own thing
Right.
because to tell you the truth, I was scared about the unknown and how to start up these systems. And I didn't know about CEDR back then.
Right.
And the office that I'm in has been around for a long time. We have about 20 employees. And I reached out to CEDR because I knew we needed HR help. There was some things going on in the office with some staff, and we needed a handbook.
Right.
So that's when I reached out to CEDR. Now, is CEDR, is it dental specific? Do you do other health professions as well?
We do other health professions, so we're health professional, healthcare oriented. But the largest group within our group is dentists. So we have 2,500 clients nationwide. So we've got somebody in every single state, multiples in many states, obviously. And most of them are dentists. But out of the 2,500, I'd say 300 of them are other specialties, from urgent care centers to private practices of different types. But the biggest part of what we do is supporting dentists, which is really good for dentists because it means we kind of understand you really well. When you talk about ROI, why we exist, what would be missing if our company were to disappear tomorrow. You guys as dentists don't exist to sell people dentistry. It's a part of what you do. We certainly sell handbooks and support systems. Your why is you're a medical professional. You guys make huge difference in people's lives and by what you do daily. And our why is a lot that way too. we're trying to make a big difference when it comes to your problem solving inside of your practice. So, I hope that answers the question, Eric. That's kind of.
No, Paul, when do dentists typically first call you, and when should they be calling you? Like right when they
Well,
open their doors and they have one employee, or should they wait until they have a few employees?
they should be 6 months ahead. They should be talking to us. And there's so much on you guys' plate that we actually, if you identify yourself as someone who's either going to do a startup or you're going to be taking over a practice that have existing employees, what we do is we kind of take this kind of backseat role with you and let you know what it is you need to do. And then as you begin to come into the practice, we work with you on those initial things. So we have checklists for you. We have a way, if you want to analyze what's going on already in the practice. If you're picking up team members, where are their benefits at? Is there a handbook there? Is it good? Is it not? So we can really help you get ready to go. And we can even help you with what do you have to do when you flip the employees over? What happens on that day? And you get all these questions of, do I have to fire everybody? All these things. Should I run background checks on everybody? And it's like, well, if you're doing a startup, obviously there's no firing. Yes, you should run background checks on everybody. If you're taking over a practice and one day the owner is no longer there and now you're going to be taking over, there's a transition that happens in the background and you do have to rehire everybody. But there's a way to do that. And it's not the way you would do a startup. You keep everybody in place who wants to be in place. You try to hold everything in place that you can, but you have to show that there's a new sheriff in town and you do need to put an employee handbook in. I'm going to say within minutes. That means, please, for God's sake, let's get this thing done in the first 30 to 60 days with you. Let's get it in and get it signed by everybody so that all those protections that I talked about can start to take effect. And we can get rid of any of the bad stuff that was happening before. And the bad stuff is hygienists being classified as a commissioned employee, no tracking of hours, no paying overtime. So you just say, man, she makes $130,000 a year in commission, or that they all make the X amount of money. That's enough. Well, it's not. Maybe someone's being paid as an independent contractor. Maybe someone's being paid as an exempt salaried employee on your team because you feel that they're an office manager and we inform you, well, then you can give them that title, but the DOL is not going to recognize their salary status because they don't manage enough people and they don't have, certain criteria is not being met. So you could end up not paying them overtime and owe it to them when you fire them or they quit or, they figure out they're not being paid properly. So we want to get rid of all the bad. We want to get rid of all the bad that was happening before. And by the way, want to do all this supporting you, Dr. Block, so that if you're in that seat, we're making you the hero. You are the hero. We're supporting what it is that you're doing so that this stuff as we go forward. Because frankly, I want to educate you for the rest of your life because there's some other stuff that we want to talk to you about, but we got to get accountability and laws and lawyers out of the way before we can start talking about things like culture and supporting you and your why and supporting you and your, we have this saying, better workplaces make better lives. And, it's one step at a time and it starts with the compliance stuff.
Now, does it start with, let's say I'm, a brand new office, and does it start with a consultation with you to try to kind of figure out, what my philosophy is, obviously what state I'm in, and what type of practice? Does it start with an initial consultation?
We talk to you, we give you a lot. We actually want you to let us know that you're thinking about doing this. And we'd love it if you're watching this. We'd love it if you told us as you were finishing school, if you started that far back. Because there's nothing to sell you. There's nothing but education to give you. And the way we work is I want to give you enough education and enough insight that you could pick to work with anybody. We just hope that you would pick to work with us. So we start with that education. If we can't get you way in the way back machine and we're catching you as you're firing up and you're finding out about us, then our role is to figure out what your timeline is, what kind of practice you're opening, where it is, kind of get you set up, because there'll be an initial, if you decide to go with us, there'll be an initial fee. We even put that off. We even discount that even further for you guys if you're startups, and we kind of help you with your cash flow by not hitting you all at once. And we go ahead and get in place with you. We start answering your questions and just giving you everything you need to get started. But it generally does start with a consultation, talk about what it is you need, what you're up to. And then we move in. If we move in officially, we do some surveys with you and we create some stuff. We go back and forth, customizing, educating as we go.
I think that's such a great idea to, fourth year dental students to just make a phone call and find out what's involved, because, when you get out of school, you got bills to pay, you have loans to pay, you want to, just focus on the clinical.
Yep.
You don't want to be dealing with HR, and you weren't trained in that.
No.
And the laws are always changing, and you need a dental specific HR company to back you up and help you up. And also, like the service, ongoing service advice that you provide, it's nice to be able to have someone to call, especially for a solo practitioner, in their own little, bubble. Like if there's an issue between two staff members, I don't know how to handle it. I wasn't trained in that. So it's great to have someone to call for advice.
Look, almost every interaction you have with a set of employees has some kind of rule, regulation, or law that runs along behind it quietly at either the state or federal level. So a quick example of that would be you've got 5 employees. One of the employees has found out that she's not getting paid as much as another employee, and she's upset. Now she's got everybody upset, and everybody's asking you, why aren't you, why are you paying me what you're paying me? And why is, she getting more when I'm the one who shows up every day at work? And on and on and on it goes. And so the smart thing to do would be to tell them that, look, salaries are confidential. This isn't something you should even be talking about with each other. If you have a problem with your pay, you need to come and talk to me about it, but don't get everybody else upset. And whoever got this started, I'm going to fire the next person that starts this kind of conversation. Well, that seems like the smart thing to do. It's incredibly illegal. It's a gift to opposing counsel, and if you fired her, it's a $250,000 gift to everybody who gets fired and subjected to this. And so there are little rules and laws, and some of them are pretty onerous. And so you got to be careful about using your common sense and understanding that you can still get the outcome you need, which is to calm everybody down, which is to address this person who started this problem. Because, by the way, we can still say, if you have a problem with your pay, you should come and talk to me personally about what it is, and we can talk about your performance and what it would take for you to earn more money. And just set them down and you go, I noticed you clocked in improperly 80 times in this past 9 months. And I'm having a hard time hearing you talking about you're upset with your pay when I spend 80 times correcting your timekeeping for it. Yeah. So, there's ways to address the things you need to address. There's wrong ways to do it. And unfortunately, what feels instinctually correct and fair is about 50% of the time wrong. It's not the way to do it. And that's hard to hear. That's hard to hear because, man, Dr. Block, when you took over as an associate and you felt this responsibility, right? It's like you're a partner now. I feel responsibility. I'm in this. You also feel a responsibility to the employees, to keeping the peace, to keeping the patients happy, to doing all those things. And we're in service to doing that sort of stuff.
You nailed it there. When I transitioned, I became like, and I didn't want to do this, but I became like the new sheriff in town.
Yeah.
Because there was so much poor behavior that was tolerated, and there wasn't accountability. There was no writing up. The culture was not what I wanted it to be. I knew it could be so much better. And I knew that the backbone is a proper handbook. something you can, fall back on and rely on. But we had staff members fighting and arguing and threatening lawsuits, and
Yeah.
it just it made for such a stressful culture. And everyone feels that, patients feel that,
Mhm.
and it becomes not a pleasant place to work. So I was, like I was saying before, not trained in how to handle those situations. So I felt like we needed to get that handbook. And um, it was the start of kind of setting things right, and getting the culture to where it is now, where there's no more drama. Well, I shouldn't say there's no more, but there's a lot
Yeah.
less of it.
Right.
Um, and it's a lot more of a positive and happy environment, because we got these things in place. But I really think it started with the handbook.
Yeah. It is. It is the place to begin. I mean, common thing that will happen is you'll someone like you will bring us in and we'll create the handbook and you'll tell everybody, hey, we did this handbook. We need everybody to sign and acknowledge it. And you'll have, if you have a team of 20 people, you have one or two push back and say, oh, I'm not signing this. I don't agree with it. I don't, there's just because that's been part of the culture is there. That's their job. They run out front. And they quickly find out within about 24 hours of you coming back and saying to us, hey, I have this employee, this is what they said. I mean, we have a way to say to them, please, we understand you have a concern, express your concern. Let us know what it is, meet with Dr. Block. It'd be great if you put your concerns in writing. And then Dr. Block, for you and I and everybody listening, the underlying message is make no mistake, you'll be signing this book by Friday. This is not a democracy. And if you'd like to continue to work here, the basis for it is that we will all be on the same page and we put a book in place that is good for all of us. It's not just for the practice, it's good for everyone. It communicates if you have a problem, you have to come tell us so that we can deal with it. It lets employees know what their benefits are, and they are aligned with what's proper for that state and for that number of employees at the federal level. It makes it clear to them that you will not tolerate harassment. You will not tolerate any of these things, and you will not take retaliation against them if they come to you and let you know about these things. So these things are good. But a lot of times people see handbooks as these sets of rules, and we try to write in plain language as much as we can. Some things I have to put in there a certain way if I want the EEOC to grant you the protection that it grants you. But for the greater good, we have worked tirelessly for years to make our language clear and understandable. Dr. Block, you noticed in your book, I'm sure you noticed that probably 8 or 9 times we said, if you don't do X, you risk being terminated. Or if you do Y, you could be terminated. I don't want to have to put that in. I'm not putting it in to threat. I'm not using it as a stick. But if I don't put the consequence in, then when you get in court and you terminate someone for doing that thing, you're in way better shape because you properly communicated in a way that an adjudicator at unemployment or in a court would understand that that was well known to the employee. You took a reasonable step with them. So that's why we have to put some of that stuff in there. But how would you know that? I mean, how would I know that when I was 30 years old and I opened my first window cleaning business? We don't. Nobody nobody told us any of that stuff. So that's what we do. You
The
probably tell
handbook
kind of passionate about this stuff.
the handbook actually is, someone that, was crying and refused to sign it may not have actually even read it, because it the way it's done is very non-threatening, and it's almost like, a lot of the copy in there is about protecting the employee and what
Yep.
to do if they feel like they're being bullied, or they feel like they're being harassed, or they don't feel
Mhm.
comfortable in the workplace, and the proper protocols. So a lot of it is helping them. Um, and sure, there's some things in there that state, if you don't abide by our policy, then you're going to get written up or
You
you may
could
be
be written up.
terminated.
Yep, could be
Yep.
fired for it. Yep, yep,
But a lot of it is for their sake, to
yep.
make it a happy, safe environment, and to make things even for all employees. Um, Now, when they sign it, is that just acknowledging that they got it and they have read it? What's the reason for the signature?
Well, the signature, you need to be able to answer the question, was the employee aware of this policy? So if part of your, and I'm going to keep using this because it's just an easier way to explain it. Part of your defense is that I can't fix something I didn't know. And I didn't know that she felt that she was being harassed in our second office by the new associate. And the first I heard of it is when I caught this lawsuit from her after she quit one day. Then your defense about that is she signed an employee handbook where she was obligated to inform her manager or me that there was an ongoing problem so that I could fix it. So I ask you, judge or jury, how does one fix something that one does not know about? And so in this instance, I'm sorry it happened. It was really bad. Guys, maybe you have to come to a settlement, but remember the penalty phase of all this stuff is where you want things to lighten up and not get caught in it. So those are the sorts of things that you want in your employee handbook, and they protect the employee and they protect you.
I mean, I imagine that as practices get bigger. I mean, we're at about 20 employees. But as they grow, they get bigger. You start to add second locations, third locations, more staff gets involved, more layers, the more complicated and more interaction. And you're dealing with people, staff from all different types of backgrounds, socioeconomic, and there's,
Yeah. Yeah, you're bringing new people on your team. It gets wanky at about 9. It gets where you can't possibly know what's going on at about 12 to 15. Anything past that, you're going to have some turnover here and there, which, it just, the more people you add, the more complicated it can be. And that's, again, reason for policy. But this stuff can start with 3 employees.
yeah.
We've cleaned up plenty of messes in very new, very small practices. So people are people. We're not perfect. Neither are you and I, Dr. Block. I mean, we probably haven't always been the best manager or the best person on any given day. So it's a human thing.
My mom Judy thinks I'm perfect, but that's
Well,
just
Judy's
her.
right. Judy's right, Eric, but still.
So I like, for example, my kids, they're 6 and 8. Most of the time they're best friends. But when you spend that much time together, especially, over a quarantine, they were like together 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the staff members see each other more than they see their families. You spend that much time with other people, there's going to be friction, there's going to be issues. And it could be unpredictable. So to have policies in place, it creates so much less stress for the dentist and the business owner. Now, can you talk about the process of like writing someone up versus firing them? How do you go about writing someone up versus they've done something that's a fireable offense?
So when we write policy, we never use like a 3 strikes rule where, like, if you're late 3 times, the 3rd time you could be fired for that. Or if you have 3, that implies that, like, you get 3 strikes for being late, you get 3 strikes for getting for catching the patient complaint that we just caught. You get 3 strikes for not entering in for the 4th time patient information into the system, so the doctor's standing in there and doesn't have the information from their visit from 6 months ago. I mean, this whole 3 strike thing is just kind of a mess. So what we want to do is we want to have tools like you have tools, and you pull the right tool out in the appropriate at the appropriate time. Those tools generally are verbal conversations with people. You need to learn how to be good at that, and you need to learn to document that stuff. And that doesn't mean that you have to put it in writing and have them sign it. It means that you go to your HR vault, which Dr. Block, we're going to give everybody, whoever listens to your podcast, free use of that HR vault with no, they don't have to put a credit card or anything. You go in there, you pop open the employee's file, you have a note, and you say, talk to Mary about being late, told her that I had noticed she was late 3 times in the last 2 weeks. We talked about why she needed to be. She promised me she would do better. End of note. And if in the file it goes. Okay. So Mary continues to be late. It doesn't seem to matter what you say. She can't quite get it right. And she's not really hearing your conversation with her about the issue and the impact. So now we teach you to have a more direct conversation with her. The issue is that when you are late, it has an impact on everybody else who has to do your job. When you don't enter in notes when they happen and you wait to do it later, you tend to forget to put those notes in. And then hygienists and care providers show up a month, 2 months, or a year later and don't know what went on. We have to go find you and see if you can remember. And the next thing you know, we've upset the patient. We're running late for the day. So the impact is on the patient, on the treatment, on your fellow employees. That all comes from you not putting in notes properly. And we could do the same thing for the person who takes the phones off the answering machine first thing in the morning, is the first one to discover that some people have canceled. Some people need your care, need your emergency care. Some people, we could just insert whatever's going on. So when you're 15 minutes late in the morning and we already have our first patient in through the door, you don't get to those messages until an hour later. And when you do, that's when we discover that our schedule's a mess and there is no opportunity for hygiene to clean up their department and fill the missing slots. And so when you are late, the impact on you see where I'm going with this, Dr. Ball. So this is the conversation that everybody needs to learn how to do, and not to speak to people in generalities. We don't use words like you're late, irresponsible, you're lazy, you're not a team player. We may use that last one a little bit, but we will have given specifics on why you're not being a team player. These are the things that you learn to do, and then you can take that to writing. So that's when a progressive corrective coaching writing happens through us. We call it progressive corrective coaching, not because we're going to progress through these steps, but because we're trying to get the employee to progress in their understanding of what it is that they have to choose to do. Because Dr. Block, I choose to be late, just like I choose to be on time. I do, and I know you do too, and so do employees. And so people are like, I'm just late. It just happens to me. It's how I am and who I am. And I can't make them choose different. I can't make them be on time. But I can choose who I work with. So now we've documented this employee is late a lot. We've now documented with her, and we've said this could result in your termination if you're late again. It's out of control. This is how many times you were late. And we expect you to not be late at all, ever. But for now, we'd like to see some marked improvement over the next month. And so we begin to communicate with the employee in writing. And then the next thing you know, this employee turns out not to be a great employee. We have other write-ups. We have other conversations we're having to have with them. And then you decide that you want to let them go. Well, you're in a lot better position to let them go than you are if you don't do any of these things. And
so if you have an employee that's being late, or just in general, there's a poor attitude or poor performance, and you have a conversation with them, you write it up, it's in writing. Do they need to sign this write up and then it goes into their personal vault?
Yeah, it goes into the vault. They're going to sign, and once again, they're going to acknowledge the document. They're not going to agree to it. It's important that you don't use corrective coaching or corrective actions that have agreements in them, because you're both agreeing to what's in there. And someone can refuse to sign a contract because they don't agree with the contents of the contract. That can blow you up in an unemployment hearing. So we need you to acknowledge that we have a policy. We've done that. And we need you to acknowledge that, that we have talked to you about you are not following that policy. And now you've done that. And we have everything that we need, you need at that point to kind of, put your castle wall up in case, you need to use your castle walls. They're built on a strong foundation. Now, the next question is often, well, I'm in an at-will state. All 49 of the 50 states are at-will. The exception is Montana. And they still have a pretty cool system there. At-will is not a bulletproof shield. No one fires anyone for no reason, and that's what at-will says. Is you can let someone go. You don't have to give them a reason. You don't have to give them notice. You don't have to do any of those things because you're an at-will employer. Likewise, the employee can do the same thing. They can just not come into work one day. They can quit without notice. They can do, they can do whatever they want to in that arena as well. It is a two-way street. The problem is there's no illegal way to quit a job, an at-will job. So the employee can't do anything illegal, but you could fire someone for an illegal reason, and there's a bunch of them. And that's why you need to document what's actually going on, because plaintiffs' attorneys make up the illegal reason based on the circumstances. So I gave you a great example. The guy came through the door with an employee and said, I have proof. I have a couple of instances of proof here where this employee answered some texts and was working and didn't get paid. You owe them $250,000. Right? I mean, that was the stretch. That was where it's at. It must be happening a lot. It must be happening all the time. You owe them all of this money. They worked for you for 1.5 years, and you owe them for this and this and this, and then you fired them, and you owe them for that too, because you not only were you not paying them properly, you fired them when you shouldn't have. And the answer to that was, well, we had policies, she recognized them, we wrote her up, and we have all these instances of her not clocking properly. That is what we call helping the authorities help you. You need to help the EEOC, you need to help the judge, you need to help the Department of Labor by showing them that you know what you're doing, you're complying, and you're doing the best you can, you're communicating. So I think you asked me what happens to the employee who doesn't sign. Well, there's a policy that says you must acknowledge communication from your employer. Failure to acknowledge communication is grounds for termination. Mm-hmm. That's what we use to get someone to sign a corrective action, and even the employee handbook, because you need not sign it for them to apply to you, by the way. That's how policy works in the realm of employment law.
What are some illegal reasons for firing? Like for those 3 examples I mentioned earlier, being late, poor performance, poor attitude. Like if I just let someone go because of those reasons, yep. Would it be better if I wrote them up first, and then if it happened again, then fire them?
Sometimes it just depends on what it is. If you have an employee who is, an obvious one, you catch employees stealing or doing something dishonest or something like that. You have an employee who has a blow up with a patient, and you just can't have that going on. I mean, there's plenty of reasons why you would let someone go kind of instantly, because it's the right thing to do. On the other side of it, is it better to be able to show that you've had some conversations, you've done some documentation? Well, not only is it better, it's the way you get things out of people. It's how you manage people. You sit them down, you talk to them. It's not always a corrective action. If you get good at this, you do it almost instantly. It's not micromanaging, by the way. Don't micromanage people. Learn not to do that. Mm-hmm. But it is to set expectations. So when we hire someone, we tell them, and we want you to expect feedback from us. Expect it. Expect it on little things and expect it on big things. But expect it to happen. And then our managers make it happen. I don't want to say we find things wrong, but we set the expectation that we're going to ask for little adjustments here and there all along the way. And it could be, one of our experts, we don't think they're using quite the right tone. They're new. They've been doing HR for a long time. They're on the phone. We overhear what they're saying and how they're saying it. And we come to them and we say, you got to change your tone there. You need to recognize that you were speaking to someone who's been doing this for 20 years, and you're talking to them like they just hired their first employee. And that's not who they are, and that's not who you are. You need to recognize where they are in their journey. Now, same thing goes for the person who is just getting to be a manager, and it's their first practice, or it's the first time they've been promoted to manager, and they're kind of lost and there's stuff going on. Well, we don't treat them like they've been doing this for 20 years, and we don't think they're stupid because they don't know something. We meet them where they are in their process. So that's an example of how we would make some corrections.
Mhm.
Some subtle corrections all the way to the phone. I mean, you guys, Dr. Block, the most important person in your office is the phone. It's the person
Oh
answering
yeah.
the phone. It's not the doctors. It's not, I mean, everyone's like, it's just the receptionist. No, 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 no.
Yep. The phone is the most important piece of equipment.
It is. And the person answering it is, you know, they're super important. So again, a great place for you to be jumping in to say, these are how that's the reason these scripts exist. It is a place for consistency and for improvement always. So
Do you help new dentists or any dental office for that matter with the hiring process? Um,
we do.
because it sounds prevention and getting the right team member, not hiring, I should say, the wrong team member and preventing that from happening can save you a lot of headaches. I had, for example, I had an assistant that we hired, and there were some red flags, but one day she came into work. I work Saturdays, and she was so hungover
Oh yeah.
that she said she was going to take a nap during lunch, because on Saturdays we're open, pretty much a full day.
Right.
And she took a nap in one of the dental chairs. I could not wake her up. She was snoring, and she was
Wow.
so passed out that we had to move down, to the other end of the office and close the door and just let her sleep it off. And, it probably would have been a better idea if I just didn't hire her to begin with. So do
Right.
you help us with that?
We do. We get you guys a hiring guide, which has a lot of really, it has a lot of guidance in it that you would not pick up on your own about hiring people and what you're thinking when you go to interview, when you run your ads. Um, we've got this neat little tool. I'll describe what you do within the tool for hiring. A difference maker. Okay, let me back up. Dr. Block, a difference maker is someone you hire, you bring into your office who makes a difference in your practice. They bring a skill, an attitude, or experience that you don't have. And if you're an owner of a business, that's who you want to surround yourself with, from that front desk all the way back to your clinical team. Everybody, you want them to be difference makers when they come through the door. So to find difference makers, you've got to learn how to interview for them. You've got to learn how to ask them questions about their experience. You have to learn how to not ask yes or no questions. You got to do behavioral interviewing. Many of you will learn to be really good behavioral interviewers, or you will find someone who is a very good behavioral interviewer. Now, could we have discovered that she was going to party hard every weekend and that pulling Saturday shifts were going to be a problem for her? Well, we could have asked her. What do you do? You let her know you're going to have to work Saturdays. We got to come in here fresh. You're going to have Sunday and Monday off. Is that a problem for you?
Right.
It's hard. It's hard to figure everything out. But going back to the tool that we have, when you're replacing someone who's not great, you put the positives on one side and the negatives on the other. And you use the negatives to interview the next person. You make sure you pick up all the positives that you managed to get from that one. And when one of the negatives is she comes in hungover all the time, you might even ask in a question, hey, we did have trouble with an employee who kind of
Hmm.
drank a lot, and they kind of came in hungover, and it was, they couldn't do their job, and they smelled alcohol, and one or a few of your people will go, I've got 7 kids, I don't drink anymore, I
Hmm.
don't drink, I understand that, that's not a problem for me. And we could do that all the way down the list of they're
Yeah.
late, they've got a bad attitude, they're not engaged. We can find questions to ask on the behavioral interview side, which might give us some insight into what they're doing. So to answer your question, I can't do the hiring for you. I don't think anybody really can. I think you guys as managers need to do it. And if it's not the best use of your time, Dr. Block, then you get someone who it is the best use of their time. It's part of their job. You could be a part of the process. It just doesn't need to be your job.
Hmm.
Your job is thumbs wet, right? Generating, answering questions, removing obstacles out of your employees' way so that they can do the best job they can do for you and the patients. That's ultimately your job. Nobody tells you that though.
Now, what's the most common questions you get? Is it about vacation, sick time? Is it about how to classify employees, like a W-2 versus a 1099? What are those, like, very common questions that you get?
Those are all the most common. Of course, we've been hit with all the FICRA questions, with everything that's been going on with COVID over the last year. But yeah, those are it. You named them really well. How do I classify somebody? What does that classification mean? Everything that you mentioned. What do I got to do when I hire someone? Um, we get a lot of questions around, injuries. Generally, it's not an injury. It's a hygienist who's having carpal tunnel or something like that that's going on. We get a lot of questions about pregnancy.
Hmm.
Um, what to do about maternity leave. Which is interesting because you'll go to you'll have by the way, you probably, well, you didn't because you weren't a startup. If you're a startup, you're going to get a knock from at least 3 or 4 payroll companies because they're watching your city's business licenses, and they're going to come to you and they're going to tell you, oh yeah, we do all of these things, and we can do HR, and we can do employee handbooks, and we can do your payroll for you. And it's not the same as working with someone like us. It is a different animal when you put HR out in front. And one of the great examples is they'll tell you, well, you only have 5 employees. You're in this state. You don't have to give maternity leave, so we don't have a policy. We didn't put a policy in there because we don't want to subject you to that. And my answer to that is, so you're going to hire 5 women to work in your practice, all of them of childbearing age. And because there's not a law requiring you to give them maternity leave, you're just going to not address it? Are we going to just make a decision with each employee? And are we going to fire the ones who get pregnant because we don't have to give them maternity leave? I mean, and the answer to all that is no. You're going to give them, you're going to give them maternity leave. You're going to set an expectation. You're going to follow the rules, and you're going to make this happen in a very constructive way so that when you call me and say, hey, I have an employee, she just let me know she's pregnant. It's not a problem. What do I do? Well, let's go to the policy, and now here's some procedures that we have to back it up. Here's what you need to talk to her about. Give her this, and man, it goes so smooth.
Hmm.
The employee, she gets it, she understands, she sees that you understand and that you've got some support. When it's time for her to come back, if she's having a problem, you know how to handle an extension, you know how to limit it if that's what you need to do. Everybody's on the same page. So that's an example. You asked me what kind of questions we get. And for me, we make a big difference there.
Now, think about everything you just said. If I was a young dentist, with my own organization, my head would be spinning right now with all the things that you just said.
Yeah.
But I don't need to worry about that because I have, CEDR to call and help me out with that. So I just think it's a no-brainer, to have an HR company like yours helping out. Are you getting a ton of COVID questions? Like, if my staff refuses the vaccine right now, is that one of the biggest questions you're getting lately?
Yeah, can we require someone to get the vaccine? If someone won't take the vaccine and they get sick, can we refuse to give them their FICRA? Can we refuse to give them FICRA pay when we gave it to other people? Back when there was no vaccine, and 12 different variations on those questions. And there are clear-cut answers to all of those types of questions, what to do and what not to do. So yeah, a lot of that. I mean, that's where we kind of led the industry. I have a legislative watch team. We were reading, as you and I are recording, or someone may see this a year or 5 years from now. But at the time we recorded this, Biden had just become president, and he just signed into law a new bill with new stimulus and support. And we were reading it as it got into its final 3 or 4 days. We were reading it and understanding it. And that's something that we do across the board. So never mind something big like this, we're also paying attention in California and Boston and in Colorado. And as they're adding mandatory paid sick days, what are the rules around that? And I could just go on and on and on. Every state right now is passing legislation. Most states, I can't say every, most states are passing very employee-friendly legislation, and they're going to do it they're doing it at the federal level as well. They're extending some protections, broadening others, and that's where you guys just need to do dentistry, and we just help you out. We make sure that your books are updated and that you're aware when something changes that affects you.
Was 2020 the craziest year of your professional career?
Imagine you had 2,500 patients and they all needed you one day. They all showed up at the door and they knocked on your door and they really needed you. They weren't kidding. You couldn't say, well, that's not an emergency. I'll see you on Friday. So yeah, it was insane for me. It was insane for my team. I have to tell you guys that if we had not had really clear strategic planning in place, purpose, everything that needs to be in place. If we hadn't been practicing that sort of stuff, which is something you all get to, I hope, my team would have never been able to stand up to the way they did and do what they did, because we opened up our support, not just to our members, but to the dental community at large. I mean, we created HR Basecamp. We have over 9,000 people in that Facebook group, which anybody who's listening is welcome. Come and join that group. We really tried to do everything we can. I mean, we had the ADA calling, we had, everybody was calling for us to get on and give the direction and the understanding. And we realized as a team early on, we just needed to do it. So we took care of our members first. We were really focused on them 16 hours a day. And in the margins, we tried to do everything we could for everybody else. And it turned out, good for everybody.
I know CEDR was a huge help for us, and we looked forward to your webinars that you had, and really helped us. So Paul, before we wrap things up, what's on the future for CEDR? What's on the horizon? Any new cool things going on?
We're updating our software. If everybody out there, if you ever think you want to put together a software system, and don't do it, just don't do it. But for us, it's what we've done. We've made it a core of what we do. So our software is about to come out and be really well optimized for mobile. By the end of the year, it's really going to go through some drastic changes that make it just, more user-friendly, more robust, more in the vision of what it is that we were looking at. We are going to spend a lot of time this year working on our new dentist program. And putting that in place and giving even more guidance away for free. We are growing our community at HR Basecamp, left and right, and we're doing a lot for our members right now. We're doing a lot more for them when it comes to kind of burrowing down in this strategic planning and this culture building thing. That's my passion, and we're doing what we're doing, trying to be better at it. That's really where we're at as an organization this next year.
Awesome. Paul, thanks so much. Again, Paul Edwards, the CEO and founder of CEDR HR Solutions. You can go to Deals for Dentists and find the promo offer of $700 off their handbook with a 2-year membership agreement. Again, Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dr. Block. I appreciate it.
I got to try some of your barbecue. You're like a barbecue champ, huh?
Yeah, man, you see a little thing back there. I've been a grand champion on a couple of local big, kind of rib cooking contests. I love to barbecue. It's in my blood. Started it when I was a kid. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. I'm hungry right now. I'm going to go eat. All right, Paul, let's be in touch. Thanks so much.
Eric, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate your patience with me too, man. I was going through some stuff, so I'm very happy to, very happy. Appreciate your patience. Thanks.
You got it. All right. Take care.